what do you think has been probably the biggest lesson or experience or failure that you had to go through that shifted, transformed what you thought business was or PR or speaking was to where you are now?
Firing my whole team. That was dark days. Dark days. I mean, like I was going through this process of like trying to trying to buy my way into success. And I mean, this is not a brag. I was very good with my money in my 20s. I like saved diligently. I had 150, 170K in savings. I started a business and I burned through all of it in like 18 months. And then I heard Dan Martell talk about that because he had a similar experience himself or something like that, like, or he shared that story. And he's like, a founder who has savings is a dangerous man because he doesn't know how to like manage that money properly.
Welcome back to the Branding Laboratory. I'm Deevo, your host, where I bring leaders and creators and founders into the lab to examine their story, their clarity, their message, and how they're showing up in the world. And I see this podcast as more than just a conversation. It's sort of an experiment. I'm going to explore the crossroads of identity, storytelling, brand expression, and how my guest fits into that. What does their ecosystem believe about all of this? And every episode is going to uncover something real, something useful, and something that can actually move your work forward, your life forward, because I do truly believe that we exist at the intersection of personal development and our professional alignment and the gift that we have and how we are serving the world. And that's what this podcast is going to uncover in the lab. Thank you for joining me. Cam, welcome to the Branding Laboratory. Glad you're here today, man.
Devo, I am so pumped to be here. This is great.
All right. So if I had to strip away the titles, the experience, all the things that you've done on the planet, I would genuinely like to know, who is Cam Beaudoin?
So I'm a creator at heart. I was like a tech guy. I've traveled the world. Like I've done all these like kind of like really fun things. But I think at the end, like I'm out there seeking to satisfy this like creative thirst. Like I don't really know how to do it. In the world of like servitude and like how can like serve more people and like amplify their voices. It's a hard question to answer, but I think somebody once told me something that they reflected something back to me, and they said, "Cam, like, what video games did you play as a kid?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, like Dota and all these other kind of characters. Like, what character did you play in that?" And I was always the support character. I was never the out front, swords blazing, full armor. Like, I was never the tank. If you got any nerds who are listening, I was always the support, the healer, something like that. And that's always kind of like something that stuck with me because when I take that to business, that's exactly what I'm doing now. I'm like supporting speakers and trying to get them on bigger stages and more stages and stuff like that. And it's like, but how can I tell their story better? And kind of like, I never shine the light on myself, but that's always amplifying other people. So I get a lot from that. Like I get a lot of like like satisfaction from that. And if I can do it in a creative way, that's even better. So I think that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Have you ever done an archetype test of yourself?
No, I've never done it.
You should do an archetype quiz. There's some complex ones, but you can get a pretty general good sense for sort of how you show up in the world by doing a free quiz online. I don't know. I don't have any particular recommendations, but it's interesting to sort of see. I actually do that work with my clients and really kind of dive into, and that wasn't a shameless plug, by the way.
I'm just saying I'm going to go search up like 30 ways to find a better date or something like that and find my dating archetype. I'll start there. And
Dude, it's no joke. So I'm in the dating pool again, and I'm just gonna stay single for a little while, man.
probably best.
It's a very depressing situation of like trying to go find online people. And
Hmm.
anyway, that's a different
That's a
conversation.
different conversation. We'll do that. That's the after show.
Archetypes are interesting. You should know what your archetype is. It kind of gives you some fundamental ideation around some things that you may or may not have considered. You said that was a hard question to answer. Who are you? And it is a difficult question to answer, but it's one worth knowing
Hmm.
sort of how you show up in the world, how people receive you, what your values are, what your belief system looks like, who are the people that you want to surround yourself with. All of those things lend itself to like how you eventually live your life. So it's really, I asked that question on purpose, just because I like to see what people say about it. You're a support character, and you're kind of a support character now in the business that you're doing, but you're still leading because most of us don't know our head from our ass when it comes to getting a speaking gig. So you're a different type of functional support. I'm curious, you were a speaker for 7 years, I think I saw on your bio. Is that right?
Yeah, it was.
and you were doing a very specific modality of speaking. How did you kind of get into that space? You were in tech, but how did you kind of jump into the landscape of public relations and keynotes and workshops and that sort of space?
Yeah, so I developed it at IBM when I was there. I was a software developer there, and I was assigned the task of helping build technology for people with disabilities. It's called accessibility. And there's some very strict laws and rules around what you need to do to build this technology in a usable way, a functional way, so that somebody who's using, say, a screen reader or is using like Zoom text or something like that is able to interact with their bank, their government office, their insurance company, their airlines, like, these like really big institutions that are fundamental, like foundational to travel or human rights, even I could say. Like, I believe that banking and being able to earn a livable income is, pretty much a basic human right. So being able to interact with that was something that was very like there's a deep mission in that, like this has to work. So I got kind of good at it. I kind of good at coding it. I kind of got good at explaining it. And in my office, different teams started asking me to come and teach them, coach them, train them on this skill, this ability. So I kind of just kind of grew from there. But I like to say that on demo day, whenever we were going to go interact with the client, it's like, who's going to introduce, who's going to like demonstrate the product? All I'm like, me. Like, here's this Cam, the developer, who's going to go and like say, I'll do it. And because none of the other developers, if you think of who a coder normally is, they got a hoodie, they're kind of sitting back there and stuff like that. That was never me. I was always a little bit more extroverted than that. And that just snowballed into, I started to get invited to a conference and say like, well, you're doing this work already for IBM. Why don't you come and speak to our audience about that too? And I said, sure. And then I started to kind of grow that part while I was within the organization. I had a special skill. I had a very unique skill and a specific skill. And I started to pitch myself to different conferences under the umbrella of IBM. And IBM was very happy to send me. I mean, that's a great thing. I kind of like rode their coattails. I hitched my wagon to their horse, and it was great. Like I got invited. It was very easy to get into. I didn't get paid because I was getting paid by the by my employer, but I was able to go and build a brand for myself. I was able to grow a podcast for myself, and that was so good. It was so good for me to build up my own personal brand. That led into other careers, led into other opportunities, and kind of get out there and start to speak, and yet get paid to speak on stage as well. After I left IBM and I went to go work at a bank under my own business, like as a consultant, I was able to go and speak for money because I had this like the people already knew who I was. Like I was not a stranger. I was not some random person begging for opportunities. I was a known and established speaker on that topic in the industry. So that's how I got started. That's how I got paid.
And this is the business you're now running, the frequent speaker. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, exactly. So now what I'm doing, so I'm no longer a speaker myself. I just help other speakers get on stage, a lot through like video branding, a lot of through outreach, cold outreach. And
Mm-hmm.
the whole mission is just like, how do we get these voices of people who have, like, I'm sure you see it in your own business too, right? You get a lot of people who they have this really great idea, this really great message, and yet they need that help to kind of put them like in a, basically it's all about like, they need to get out of their own way. Like if they want to stay that expert in that one domain, they don't need to know how to do lead gen specifically. It helps if they do, but I think that many creative types, speakers in that bucket as well, they go through this transition phase of like, I'm doing it all myself to I've got to bring on extra help. And that's kind of like, I love it when people are like in that turning point. They're like, I just want to go speak. Can you handle this for me? 100%. That's what I do.
I mean, that is a benchmark of entrepreneurs, right? We do think early on that we have to handle it ourselves. I was in that same boat. I'm almost wondering if the process itself has to occur that way in order to sort of you grow exponentially through the process of, or if I were to have that shortchanged early on, and I didn't have the revenue to do that early on. I couldn't just be like, hey, Marielle, come work for me, or Ira, who now work for me full time. I couldn't do that in those days, but nonetheless, it would have fast tracked my process and saved me a lot of headaches. But on the other hand, I had to learn to do a lot of different things early on as an entrepreneur. So maybe I would have shortchanged myself had I bypassed that. I don't know. I sort of run up against that existential question. But
Mm-hmm.
anyhow, in terms of, I just want to, before we move on, this disability inclusion stuff. So when you were doing this for IBM, you were going on stages talking about how IBM set up disability inclusion and like best practices for other companies to do. Is that sort of like the takeaway on it?
Yeah, it started off by being very technical. I mean, me as a coder, I'd go up and actually talk about how do you code code this. But then I very quickly realized, and this is a great lesson for everybody, is that you need to start getting comfortable speaking to decision makers in your business, in your practice. If you're a speaker, like I know a lot of speakers who come up and they're like, I help UX designers, and it's like you're not speaking to UX designers. You're speaking to the leaders and their bosses,
Yeah.
and maybe even the VPs of client experience at a company, because they're the people who have the budget. Like, get out of your own way. Like, stop speaking to the doers and start speaking to the planners, the people who can actually open up the wallets. Because a lot of speakers I talk to, they're like, "How do I get these $10,000 corporate gigs?" Well, who are you talking to? I'm reaching out to the manager of the developers. It's like they don't got no budget. They're not the ones. They have to go and talk to their boss, and they're good for buy-in. Like, good for buy-in. Like, if you want to get somebody on your side. But I would say go collect a couple of logos. Go call the VP of whatever, of product at a tech firm and say, like, hey, I've got a free lunch and I'd like to go. But then because then you can add that logo to your resume, and that's going to be way more powerful than trying to convince somebody to tell their boss to bring you in as a speaker. Like, it's just like the road is just so much short if you just go start collecting testimonials and logos first.
So you started off doing this by yourself through the banner flagship of IBM, and now you're kind of out on your own doing it as sort of for other individuals. You're getting paid to do this now, which is a fundamental shift. Congratulations, by the way. Not a
Yeah.
lot of people can figure that out. What do you think has changed in terms of how you view the process, the industry, the profession from when you started under someone else's umbrella and now as an entrepreneur doing it yourself and sort of seeing a different side of things, if you will?
Everything now is about personal branding. Everything now is about how you hold yourself online and the
Mhm.
proof that you can demonstrate. I'll give you a very concrete example here. There's something called the CSP, I think Certified Speaking Professional,
Yeah.
that's out there. Nobody knows about it now. Nobody cares about it now. And anyone who says they care about it, they are CSPs themselves, or they are under the umbrella of the people who designate CSPs.
Mm.
Because how many conferences have you ever been to where you go up and you're like watching this person on stage, and they're obviously getting paid for it. They're obviously getting paid very well for it. And you're like, they just have the hands-on experience. They've been in the trenches. So let's say, for example, someone who's very good at creating short-form content, right? You get them on like lots of marketing conferences are bringing these people in, brand building conferences, things like that. Like, they don't have a CSP. They have no designation. They've done the work. They've
Mm.
done the work to get the audience, and now they can teach that to other people.
Mm.
Same thing. Like a VP of marketing at Coca-Cola who's been doing this for 37 years or something like that, who goes up and speaks on stage as their legacy. They don't need certification at all. So I'd say these designations and certifications for speakers are kind of like falling by the wayside. Now it's all about proof first, brand second. Like, it's all up there. So one thing I tell everybody I work with, it's like, put your content online, your long form workshops online. I don't care if it's 3 hours. Go post on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because if someone's going to sit through a freaking 3 hour video of you, they're not going to be like, okay, team at Atlassian, we're going to sit around a TV screen right now to save a couple $100,000. We're going to go watch this speaker. We're going to learn. Nobody's doing that. They would much rather bring somebody in and pay for you to come in and tailor an experience for them
Yeah, for sure.
to and pay you to do so
Mhm.
than like no one's going to watch it online. That's
Yeah.
crazy. So show it. Like, you got to get out there and show your proof. Like, put it up online as much as you can.
So conversations like these are why I created this podcast. And really, whether you're a founder or you're an executive who's trying to move into the entrepreneurial world, or a vice president or whatever you are, if you have a message, and you said something I want to call out. You said as long you have to do the work, but I would like to say that doing the work, having the core expertise in subject matter, is not the same thing as building a personal brand to me. And I'd like to get your feedback on that. When you're building a personal brand, and you've said this a couple of times, you are the brand, and you have to actively, purposefully build something around what you are the brand means to you. What is your zone of genius? What value do you offer? How are you going to deliver that? Who is your audience? What makes you different? Because having the personal brand, like you've called out 2 or 3 times now, that's what's going to separate you from me. If all things being equal, you and I are doing the exact same thing, and I've never gotten online. I've never written any content. I don't have any social proof. I've never done anything to build out Deevo, the brand. But Cam's gone out there and he's rolling and he's doing all these things. All things being equal, the people are going to look at Cam and Deevo and they're going to be like, not only is he better looking, but he's got social proof. Like, this dude has built something around who he is. And I was speaking to an executive yesterday. He's trying to leave the corporate world, and he reached out to me because he was interested in sort of like uncovering with his personal brand. He's an older cat, and he never, someone must have, his admin or something must have said you need a personal brand, and so he's like quizzing me on what this was, and he's like, I just don't know if I have the bandwidth to do that or the energy to do that. I'm like 70 years old. I was like, so how are you planning on getting out there so people understand what you bring to the table? Like, why would I hire you if you've never done anything before? So, anyway, interesting conversation. And so I'm sorry, I sidetrack. Going back to your statement, as long as you've done the work, do you agree
Mhm.
with what I said? You do have to have the subject matter expertise, but simultaneous to that, when you're building a brand, you actually purposefully have to build a personal brand around said expertise, plus all the other things that are the other variables. You agree with that statement?
Oh my gosh, yes. And like, what is brand? I think um who said, I can't remember. Brand is trust, right? And
Mm,
brand is association. And I think like
perception.
perception, good one. Yeah, as well. The more I like research this topic, and like there seems to be like this real fork, and maybe you can help me out with this because it's something that's like there's like the people who think personal brand is like logos and fonts and like the colors and posting as many times as you can online. And then there's the other side, which is like learn deeply about who you are and what you believe in. And that's definitely the camp that I'm in now. You asked about values earlier on, and I just finished a big exercise, which we need to get into and maybe talk about. But I did a lot of deep work, and it's like courage, authenticity, and simplicity are like the three like core values. Like, everything I boil down to, and I'm not sure if like I did because I feel very strongly against the opposite of that too. Courage has cowardice, which is my dark word, and then we could talk about that because that's like a big dark word in my past, and I feel very strongly against that. And I mean, the other two is like complexity and falsehood or fakeness, of the other two values. And so that to me is like once I discovered that, everything became easier. And I think that that's kind of the problem. What happens if you've worked in corporate for 37 years and now you have to go and identify your own values, especially if you've never done it before, because your values were attached so strongly to the corporation that you worked at. You give an example of someone who's 70 years old and he's going out and wants to become more and create this brand. It's like, well, who are you? Have you ever really asked yourself that question?
Yeah.
And that's like such a bunch of self-discovery. And I I I know how much work it took me to do. It took me, a good 6 weeks to really like listen to a podcast about this and like write it down and another one and like really do that deep work. It's like that takes time, yo. I don't know if people have like the bandwidth or like the energy to get to go and do that. But all that to be said, it's like how do you like that's the deep work that needs to get done to create something meaningful and to get out there and do the work. So subject matter expertise is one thing, but that doesn't mean that you can't build while you're doing it. Like it doesn't mean you can't go and speak on the topic. Like, hey, I'm just learning about personal branding because I think it's of value to my clients. Like I did a lot more work on like storytelling and video content creation before. And now it's like, well, what does personal branding mean to that? And it's like, oh my gosh, this whole world is opening up to me now. This isn't something if I'm going to speak about it. So it's like, have you done the work and have you tried like to try to do things? And I would say that somebody who's worked in corporate for 37 years, they've done the work. They just need to start to learn to package it in a way
Mhm.
that makes it attractive for people to want to like listen to and learn from and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, that is the distinction I'm trying to make. Like, just because you have 37 years of experience doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to be attracted or asked to speak on a stage. You're going to have to purposefully and proactively build something around this idea that you now want to create around your personal brand. I love that you did the values work. I mean, my entire business centers around values and
Awesome.
all the different things that you're doing and who are you as an individual. I've developed a whole 6 week sprint where I take people, founders like yourself, through this program, and the output of that is a very, very distinctive, clear, unique understanding of who you are and how you want to show up in the world and who you work with and stuff. It's really interesting, this idea of values, and I don't think they get enough credit. And I was having a sort of an online debate with someone on this whole idea of purpose and values, and they were saying they're the same things. I was like, they're not even close to the same things. One is like, are you still frozen? You went frozen for a second.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. So interesting. To answer your question about brand, the people who think that brand is graphic design and a logo, they're the dinosaur, and I think most people are starting to see that now and wake up to it. Social media has done that for us. Um, The fastest way to really kind of clarify that for people when I'm having this conversation is think of a billboard, and people still use billboards, which is crazy to me. But the brand is the message that goes on the billboard, and then the marketing of it, for example, is where do you place the billboard? Like what part of the city? Where's the freeway? Is that out in the country? Like yada yada yada. So I think that always helps people sort of figure that out. And most importantly, the brand is, we already talked about this, it's the customer journey touch points, literally
Hmm.
every single touch point that your customer has the opportunity to see, feel, taste, receive, watch, take, like everything. It's every single thing that they see is like they're starting to form an opinion, a bias, whatever, a cognitive layer that's like, "Ah, I love Cam Beaudoin and everything he has to say." So yeah. In terms of this journey, and I've got countless stories. I had two businesses that failed early on in my space. What do you think has been probably the biggest lesson or experience or failure that you had to go through that shifted, transformed what you thought business was or PR or speaking was to where you are now?
Firing my whole team. That was dark days. Dark days. I mean, like I was going through this process of like trying to trying to buy my way into success. And I mean, this is not a brag. I was very good with my money in my 20s. I like saved diligently. I had 150, 170K in savings. I started a business and I burned through all of it in like 18 months. And then I heard Dan Martell talk about that because he had a similar experience himself or something like that, like, or he shared that story. And he's like, a founder who has savings is a dangerous man because he doesn't know how to like manage that money properly. Because I thought, what's that term? I think who there's a copywriter and he's very famous. Like he who can outspend his competition will end up winning. And I took that really to heart. I'll be like, I'll just spend. I just like just cash. I'll go to every conference and go and like buy booths and do all this kind of stuff. And what like I learned a very hard lesson because I came very close to having to shut it down, within like 10K to be like, this is my last 10K. And it's last 10K to pay myself, last 10K to kind of make sure that I've got Christmas presents under the tree because that was it, and or celebrate my son's birthday party or like really it was like that. Like, are we not like selling the house, but it's more like I got to get a job to pay mortgage if I do this, and that was like, you know,
So you laid off everybody and then you just went lean, or
oh
you
yeah.
hired? Was that what you
Yep.
did?
No, I went super lean. I did an analysis on like everything I'm doing and I just projected forward. Like all the lessons I knew about money that I did for personal, I just never brought them over to business. And so it's like, how do you manage your cash flow? And cash flow is king. Like you got to do your cash flow state. Like you got to sit there uncomfortably and look at your bank statement like every single day. And now I do it daily, right? It's like that reminder that, okay, I've got an operating runway of 8 months now, like saved up. So no, unless I go crazy and think of like, yeah, maybe I need to hire, whatever, or do something like really big. I have an 8 month runway of doing nothing. I could get no sales for the next 8 months and I would still be able to survive. And I'm like, okay, that's like a comfortable place to be based on all my employees. But I wasn't running like that. I was just like, hey, go to a conference, go another course, go $10,000 and go and that. So I think that is probably so for anyone who's listening, who's maybe still in corporate or still working right now, you need to save up that and then you need to like really budget, especially if you're going to bring in help, because now you are responsible for the livelihood of
Yeah.
3 to 5 people, right? And let's be real, like many people who start out, we're hiring overseas. Like my whole team's overseas. My whole team's in the Philippines, and I love my team, but I didn't identify as somebody who is responsible for them. And while I was a manager before, at a bank. I was a manager. Like I knew how to like you don't get fired at these big institutions in North America, right? Like you're working at whatever Bank of America. Unless you do something stupid, you're not going to get fired. Even if a team shuts down, you're generally at these big institutions. Like you try to shift around, or maybe not. Like mostly, they're gonna try and find a place for you if you can, unless there's a huge downsizing. But man, startup world, it's like people lost their livelihoods, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, jobs are, yeah. Now I keep that top of mind now. So I'm responsible for the company and the team and the bank. Like, so that was a huge lesson. Anyway, from there, changed my offer, flipped it around, started listening to what my clients were saying, really like what they needed help with, wrote that into my offer, and then just like made 4 or 5 sales that next month. And then, things started to pick up again. That's it.
My takeaway from that is that you were introspective enough and self-aware enough to sort of see the writing on the wall and then do something about it. And I think a lot of people get stubborn in the process and just sort of refuse to make those changes because it admits failure. They have to admit failure, or they have to admit that something that they thought was like the way to do something didn't work out. It's really interesting to sort of see. And I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I look at their journeys and their trajectories and the things that aren't working out for them. And it's funny. There's always a lot of personal emotion assigned to building a business, right? We take it
Yep.
very, very seriously. This is our baby. This was my idea. This is going to change the world. And then we get into it, we're like, fuck, this is a lot of
Yes.
damn work, man.
My God. Yeah. Yeah.
And that the accounting piece, I would like to just parrot that because it is really critical. There's been a lot of
Mm.
fundamental shifts in my business and now the different things that have gone on, but I'm hiring a good financial team for me because I
Hmm.
don't actually want to get stuck in the weeds at looking at that stuff, but hiring a good controller that will at least be able to
Yeah.
sit with you every single week or whatever, monitor it, manage it. And I can't stress how important that is for running a business, especially if you're an entrepreneur.
Like, it's
Yeah.
so easy, right? Because, let's just say we want to do like a new website, right? Like, to me, it used to just be, oh, I know how to do a website. I can go and find someone on Fiverr, like Upwork. Like, you go through this whole mental process of like, I know how easy this is and I'll figure it out. And if it's 5, 10, 15K, like I can get through that no problem. But it's like, if you have a controller, someone who can bounce an idea, you can be like, well, what's our budget? Like, I need to do a website. And they're like, okay, great. You'll do it in 4 months. And you're like, no, I need it now. And it's like, okay, so what do you want to sacrifice? Like, what are you willing to give up?
Hmm.
And that becomes the question. It's like, oh, or make more sales. Like
Yeah.
that's like the two options. You can either cut
Yeah.
expenses or make more sales, but you can plan for it. And then it's like, okay, so now I know I have to go and close 3 more demo reels to go and do this thing that I want to do. No problem. Now it's
Yeah.
like I got no start. I know where I'm going.
Yep. And being able to have some data around that, first of all, is important. And cause and effect. I think a lot of people forget about the cause and effect of running a business. Like your inputs equal your outputs, no matter what it is. And if you're spending too much money and not making enough money, then there's a problem there. And I don't think that when people hear me say I have a controller, I just say the fancy word because I like calling her the controller. But she's really good at what she does.
Hmm.
And when people hear that, they're like, oh, it's not necessarily a high expense item per se, because you can find people who can do this on the side for you. Maybe you have a friend who's, an accountant on the side. It doesn't mean you have to, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're not making multi-millions of millions of dollars and have massive teams that working for you. You can still go out and find somebody that can do this for you and kind of help you keep in alignment if you don't want to dive into it. I know I have. So when
Yeah.
people Google you and your company, Cam Beaudoin, what do you want them to receive about you?
So I want them to see that I am trying to rethink the way that people get on stage, like with this whole idea of like personal branding and video content and like video content first, because there are dinosaurs in this space, as I'm sure there are in many spaces, right? I want people to see, okay, Cam can create an experience for me. He has my best intentions at heart, and he's going to take me from wherever I am now to the next level. I found that's like if I look back at all the compliments. I think this is a good exercise for everyone too. Whenever you create a project or finish a project and someone gives you compliments, like you should be documenting that. You should be putting that somewhere that you can go back to and say, okay, I did this and this was good. And like, why was it good? And you're going to hear the same type of feedback over and over and over again. And something that I keep hearing over and over again for me is um, you are great at reflecting back my best aspects.
Hmm.
And it's like, very interesting. So,
Sounds like a good coach. That's what a good coach should do.
yeah, yeah, good point. And
Mhm.
uh, I'm not saying I'm anti-coaching, but I don't want to get into the coaching space. Like I think we need to focus, and I really want to focus more on this whole idea of like video branding and really taking people to the next level, showing them what their best pieces are, and then like helping them
Mhm.
enhance themselves that level. And I think in the speaking industry, because the product is you, people are buying you. There is no in between, which is why it hurts so much when you send out 500 emails and you get 0 responses, because they're not saying no to the product. They're saying no to you as the person. Like, Deevo, you suck. I don't want to hear you on my stage. And like, that's hard. That's hard when you don't get those responses. But like teaching people or showing people that there's another level to you, or there's a deeper level, is something that I hope more people can see. And because I think it's very valuable. We all want to be seen very deeply. And yeah, if I can help people get there, I think that's awesome.
Encapsulate that in a sentence. If I Google you, what should I, or what would you want me to read about you in a sentence?
Cam can help me tell my story better than I can.
That's what I do. You can't have that Google search
Oh,
result.
sorry, buddy. Oh, damn it. Okay,
Damn it.
let's go
I'm gonna
retry
see
that.
it. Talk to my SEO guy right now. That's a funny thing because competition is a funny thing. Let's talk about that for a minute. I
Yeah.
think early on in my career, and I own a photography agency as well, and I did that was my first zone of genius into the entrepreneurial world. And I used to think early in my career that competition was competition, and I'm not going to collaborate or share my secrets on how I took this photograph with you. And it's like, bro, have you opened up Pinterest? Everyone has this photograph. So, so this whole idea of community, competition, collaboration, it was sort of a foreign thing to me early on in my entrepreneurial world. I didn't really think about it. Which I don't really know why I didn't think about it, but I didn't do much community building early on. I was
Hmm.
so focused on my craft and so focused on making money and so focused on like just doing the thing that I never really stopped and sort of took a step back early on and said, I could probably find some help here, or it might be helpful to make some connections with people. How important to you, or how important do you feel, especially for entrepreneurs, it is to build a community around you?
I'm of two minds. Okay. Because I think it depends on how much, like, I don't think it's the first thing that you need to do. I think you should get really good at something first. And I
Hmm.
think that as entrepreneurs, what we think is the end product never is, right? I'm not sure about you, but like what I started with was definitely not what I'm doing now. I'm thinking of doing like an event now, like live. I only want to do live stuff now, which is so weird because originally it was like, give me only virtual. Like I only want to do like this whole, I can like get to the core as much as possible. But what I found is that, um, because I do serve solopreneurs who are speakers, they're they want community. They desire it. But if I started with that, I don't think I would have had enough context. And that means I would have burned a lot of bridges or at least alienated a lot of people from my community just by nature. And I know because I did that. Like I built a school community, but I was never really into it because a community to nurture and develop a community is in and of itself an entire project. So I kind of believe in get good. Like in your example, you got good at photography. I'm sure you were a good photographer before, but you got good at the business of photography. And had you started the community first, I think it would have like maybe even distracted you from getting good at your craft first. Yeah.
So building a community and being part of a community, they're two separate things for me.
Yeah.
I guess what I was asking about, and I don't know that I'm right or wrong in this,
Mm-hmm.
but I think early on, yes, you should definitely be good at what you do. But I think a lot of times it's not the product that you deliver, it's how people receive your product and how people
100%.
believe you or receive you. And so reputation is everything. Reputation is literally everything as an entrepreneur, right? And so my whole point was, had I spent more time on building relationships with my clients or
Mm.
building relationships with partners or potential vendors or collaborations, they would have acted as disciples for me. They would have sent me more work. They would have, and that ended up happening organically just because I was good at what I did and I'm not a dick. But had I spent more proactive time on that early on, I think that it would have had a compound effect on my business because I would have been nurturing people that would have been nurturing me back, I guess is
Mm.
where I'm going, rather than just focusing on my craft. So I think we're saying the same thing roughly, but
Yeah.
yes, okay, cool.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that because it's important that you say like vendors and the people in the space. So my mom was an entrepreneur. She would sew awnings and like industrial fabric.
Hmm.
So like awnings and boat covers and stuff like that too. And she developed a relationship with like the local um like welding company who would build the frames, and then
Mm.
also like the local marinas and stuff like that, just from pure like we're talking about like the 90s, right? So like she'd walk around and be like, hey, I'm Linda and I do this. And like we've kind of forgotten that, I think, in the digital age, because every conversation cuts, right? When you and I are done this conversation, and I'm having a very like this is a great conversation. It's like, what happens after this? Like what touch point do we commit to in 3 months and say, hey, how did your business grow and what have you done to change? Like, how can I support you in that? And going back to the idea of competition, like we think that everything is a take all game, and it's so not. Like you would not be able to service every single person who needs a brand, like who needs brand, like even if you had the largest company, like that's impossible. Let's use one example of like Alex Ramosi. He helps people in business, right? And yet we're still making money.
Hmm.
Why has he not stolen all of our
Yeah,
clients yet? He
totally,
just made a $3.5 million book sale, right?
totally.
And yet there's still people who have no idea who he is. And so I think it's like finding the people that you just enjoy hanging around with, and then, supporting them every way you can.
Community over
Totally.
competition every single
Mhm.
time.
Every single
I,
time.
I had an interesting conversation with somebody about this yesterday in the sauna of all places. And I'm not going to go down too far down this rabbit hole, but I would like to get your take on this just because I find it really interesting. So the sauna has turned into like the philosophical stone, if you will, the philosopher's stone, because we end up getting, depending upon who's in there in the morning after the workout, there's some really deep and meaningful conversations
Just
that happen.
take a couple mics and a camera and see what. No, don't do
Dude,
that. No.
I'm not joking. I have literally asked some of the guys, would you guys be interested if I recorded this conversation just because there's some really cool stuff that comes out of it. Anyhow, I digress. So this guy was talking, he was talking about sort of this idea of American expansionism and how we were entitled to basically take whatever we wanted across the globe. And that everyone else who stood in our way was doing just that. And so I'm paraphrasing what he said. And I said, I wonder if you felt differently if you lived in another country and that model was being employed on your country and you were a citizen of that country, if you would feel the same way. And he's like, well, I'm an American. Of course I wouldn't. And I was like, well, how do you think it makes them feel? And like the whole world is not built on should not have been built on a competition model. It should have been built on a collaboration model. And this guy, so I'm not going to go into the rest of the conversation because it was a whole different multiple levels. But he said he didn't believe in this whole idea that competition is what made us great as a species, specifically Americans. And I was like, dude, you're missing the point. Like it has nothing to do with like Americanism or Russianism or any, like the whole point is like community over competition is really what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so he completely missed it, but it was a really interesting conversation.
That's cool.
In terms of you and your superpowers, you've talked a little bit about helping speakers stand out in a crowded market. There's a bazillion of you who say the exact same thing. And in fact, over the last 6 months, I've interviewed at least 10 people. I still have not been able to find the right person that I want to work with in this area. So I'm asking you, this is not an interview question, but what makes you uniquely qualified to make a statement like that? And what is it that you deliver in your process that makes you different than everyone else?
Well, I think there's one word in there that shines is actually the word process. It's like I've got proof and I've got results. So I come from after IBM, I did a lot of work on like sales and marketing stuff. I was really big in the world of direct response copywriting, and there's you have to learn the basics of like marketing and sales to get anywhere, I believe, in life or to start a business. And I think a lot of speakers, they just avoided that question altogether. Like, I'm not a salesperson. I'm just here to like change the world. It's like, no, you like I said before, you are the product and you are the sales. So right now I'm working with a couple speakers and they don't have a clear offer. Like, what do you do? How do you change? Like, what is somebody walking away with after they listen to you speak? And it's like a good feeling. It's like, wait, that's that's not. How do you monetize a good feeling? I'm working with someone right now, and he's he's an environmentalist. He has been named one of Europe's. He's on the board of some European environmental societies and things like that. And I say, okay, like, what's the takeaway? Well, a better world. It's like, yes, but that doesn't sell. Like, we've got to get down to that whole point of like, if you're going to go and market yourself as a speaker, you've got to create intrigue and a hook, and you got to understand, like, these are all kind of fundamental things that I think that we understand if we're building brand or like doing stuff online on a regular basis. We kind of get like, hook is everything. If you don't have a good hook, you're never going to get into the anything. Like, no one's even going to open up the email, no one's going to keep watching your content. It's like, hook is everything. So there's like all these little aspects that you could learn from over here and over there to get on stage, and it's all about intrigue. Actually, I talk a lot about the word true. So things have to be timely, relevant, unique, and hold on, I forgot my E. I'm making this, and entertaining. Like those four things, like timely, relevant, unique, and entertaining. If you're not hitting those four things in a speech, then you probably are like you got to work on that last whatever letters that you don't have. So the whole idea of like building a profile for you and then doing outreach and getting data back. We don't have enough data in the world of speaking. And that only comes from sending out 10,000 emails, understanding that nobody responded, figuring, okay, so that audience was not for you. Who else can we go target? What else can you offer on the table? What other things can you do? So that there's a bit of a mishmash of a bunch of things.
the takeaway that I took from that is that you have a process in place. You've vetted the process. You've seen results from the process. So you're not trying to be all things for all people. I'm assuming that you're working with a very specific type of client. And if so, who is that? Who is your ideal dream client?
Yeah, I really work well with people who have a business mindset. Like I love my motivational speaker friends and clients, but they just there's there's a there's a lot of people like that. And if you want to talk about what differentiates you, like what differentiates one motivational client from or one motivational speaker from another, like how many bad things can happen? Like you had four bad things happen to you. Well, I've got five. Like you're going through, I'm going through divorce. Like let me tell you, like how many bad things can I pile on to talk about overcoming those hurdles? And again, if the final outcome is just I'm going to feel better, that's a very difficult thing to sell. If the outcome instead is I'm going to take your company growth from like wherever it is now and I'm going to 10x it because I've got this process, this like that is so much easier to get somebody on stage for that.
So more
And
results oriented. There's a
totally
result
results.
oriented.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would imagine the unicorn is somebody who has business experience, subject matter expertise, but also has the ability to deliver a good message that could be inspirational, could be entertaining. That's sort of like the unicorn in the space.
Yeah, and I would even say that the delivery part is is almost secondary because the delivery comes with reps,
Mm.
right? We've completely forgotten that. So let's go back to what you said earlier about you got an older gentleman, corporate stuff like that, right? Like what I've observed is that many speakers who've come out of the corporate world with a big title, they feel very weird about going to do outreach themselves again because they feel they're taking this big hit in their ego. Their ego is like, my title should take me further. And it's like, your title means nothing.
You said something early in the conversation. If you haven't taken the time to sort of do the work about who you are,
Mm-hmm.
that work primarily centers around your ego. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I know because I speak from experience because I was an executive that left the corporate world and had to do all the work again. And I was like, fuck, I'm eating ramen noodles again.
Yep.
This is demeaning. And it
That's
wasn't until
demeaning. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
it wasn't until I wrapped my head around and started really doing the work on me as a human that I realized how many different fallacies that my programming was operating on. You're a programmer, so you'll appreciate this. And I had to reprogram my DNA and how I showed up in the world.
Yeah.
And most of it centered around my ego. So anyway, executive, 37 years, ego's in the way.
Totally. So we're holding this ego like I should be, or I must be, or I deserve to be. And those statements right there, I think it starts with that is like, whoa. I'm working with someone right now, and he was an executive. He worked as a consultant for a long time, and then all of a sudden, now I'm saying, yeah, it's been 3 months. We haven't seen results. And he's like, well, there should be results now. It's like, okay, let's reframe here for a second. To get on stage, 6 to 9 months sales cycle minimum. CES, the big tech conference, is booking speakers for January 2028. It's 2.5 years away because their main stage speakers are $50,000. So there's you have two things conflicting there. Number one is schedules for the event. Number two is schedules for the speaker because the best speakers like who charge that price, they're booked out 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
So why do you think that you just because you have a like oh I want to be a keynoter, I want to be on the main stage at CES? Great, you were like VP of technology
I want to play for the Las Vegas Raiders.
We all like you are going a few steps back, like and yeah, you're taking a step back to go further and faster later on. But it's like this is the process. This is the step-by-step process. You cannot avoid the work, the reps, the data gathering as a part of all this. So that's yeah, that's a common conversation that I have quite often. Like you think you're up here, but the market sees that you're like somewhere chaos down here.
We're ego-driven people, so you know we think we're a lot bigger and badder than we really are, and in fact, you know, some of us are. Not me speaking, but some people are really talented at what they do, and they deserve to be seen and heard in a larger audience. And they don't really want to tie into a 9-month cycle. What happens when you're working with somebody on a because they're not necessarily going to show up on a Tony Robbins stage overnight, but I'm assuming there's smaller variables in between that gives them more experience, puts them in the game, gets them tied to the process that you're working on with them as well. They're like the smaller, lower hanging fruit to get kind of in the game. Is that kind of a safe assumption to make?
Yeah, if they want to do that, and I think so. I have two routes that we generally propose with that. Number one is you got to go back to free gigs. You got to go back to logo collecting, and now I'm not saying the Kiwanis Club or your local BNI group or something like that. That's like a really small fry. Anybody can get those.
I spoke at the Rotary Club last week.
Great audience, but
I
you never
delivered a
you never get
badass presentation, but yeah, I totally hear what you're saying.
there are conferences out there in a niche that you can go and speak at, and it will be for free. It'll be a breakout room. But again, you are logo gathering, you are collecting references and referrals, you are learning who the event organizer is and understanding how they operate, which is kind of like part of the process of building a business, right? Like
Hmm.
that's what you're doing here is building a business.
Hmm.
And so, my claim to fame was meetup.com. I spoke, my top was like 21 talks, and I hammered out meetup.com. I looked at all the tech meetups in Toronto and surrounding areas, and I just like blasted them consistently with like, hey, I'm a speaker on accessibility and I would love. And like it's funny because I heard nothing, 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 nothing for like 3 months. Then all of a sudden they all got back to me kind of all at the same time. It's like, we got no one for January. You want to come in and talk? Be like, that's it. That's my that boom, I'll be there.
That's
And I
great.
did like 10 virtuals and like 11, whatever it was, like 11 um like live
What was your
talks.com.
first paying gig that you got personally?
I spoke at CSUN, which is an accessibility conference. I got paid $500.
Hmm.
My first paid gig. First paid gig. My last paid opportunity was $7,500 at a big tech company, and I knew somebody on the inside. They did not vouch for me though, which is crazy, but it opened the door because I said, "Hey, I know this person works here, and would you be open for a conversation?" And I had over 700 people on the call. It was a virtual talk of all things, middle of COVID. I think they had extra budget, so, but $7,500 for a 90-minute talk on accessibility inside a big tech company. That was my best.
Back to your dream client. They have a business mindset, but they can also have a delivery in terms of motivational, maybe inspirational, entertaining to some capacity. If you had to wave your magic wand, and I do have a magic wand right here,
Ooh.
what really share with me? Because most of my listeners are entrepreneurs, they're people like us that listen to this show, and that audience is growing. Thank you, listeners. I appreciate you. What does that person look like? What do they do? Give me if people wanted to reach out to you and be like, oh man, I really love Cam. What do you have to say? I'd like to reach out to him. What does that person sound like that you would like to dream client work with?
Well, I love people who are forward thinking and really who see stage as like a key part of their business. Like there again, there's two people. There's people who identify as the professional speaker and like all I do is speak, but then there's people who see speaking as a vehicle, as a driver to a lot bigger and better things. I love those types of people. The people who are the professional speakers, they there's a bit of reset that has to happen to it because I think the industry of professional speaking is dying because if you're a coach, you're doing something. If you're just speaking, then it's just your voice. Like there's a bit of
Yeah.
mismatch there.
Yeah.
So people who see speaking as a core part of their business, as a vehicle to drive success in other areas, I just love working with those types of people. People who see value and are not afraid of like getting in front of camera or a bit humble in the way that they know and have a really core message. Like they really see their message as something that can transform the world. And it doesn't matter if you're a SaaS founder. Like I work with tech people, and they're like, no, my SaaS, like it is going to change healthcare. It is going to change the way that HR in healthcare works.
Mm,
Cool. Like
that's great.
that's a mission. Like that's a mission there. So yeah, like I love working with those types of people, people who are ready to get to the next level in speaking. Yeah.
All right, we're running out of time. So this next set of questions are sort of like a hot seat for you, if you don't mind. So if we
Ready.
can, I just want to kind of fly through those. But quick pause here. If you're enjoying this conversation with Cam Beaudoin, please reach out to him. All of his information will be in the show notes. If you are an aspirational speaker, or if you've got a message, if you have a mission that Cam just touched on, reach out to him and see what he can do for you. And that's why I started this podcast again, is so that we can interview people and let people hear a larger audience for people like Cam, who you have your audience. You're in Toronto, is that right?
Yep.
Or is
Yep.
that, I used to date a girl from Toronto, Canada. Canadians are good people.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I've
Appreciate
never
that.
actually met a Canadian that I did not dig. Interesting. I don't know what's in the water up there. All right, if your business ended tomorrow, right? Just ended
Yep.
tomorrow, what's sort of unfinished for you?
um, I mean, other than all the clients, I really want to give this event thing a big push. I'm planning a big event on a monthly basis now, and I want to take that model and take it to a bunch of cities. And like it's like a speaker brand in a box. So you just show up, you get all your video, your demo reel, your meet the speaker. I love interviewing people. Like I really get a lot from that, researching them and then interviewing them, and I would feel really like I'd be like I feel like I missed something if I all of a sudden lost it all tomorrow, because I'd be like I never got a chance to try and run that. So that's a big thing for me.
I'm big on legacy. Some people think it's a little bit narcissistic or ego driven. I don't believe so. I think legacy is what you've left on the planet. What's the difference you've made? What are the problems you've solved? Who are the people's lives that you've touched? For me, that's legacy. And I don't think that we're here for any other reason other than to build a better version of ourselves and to help other people in the process. So, what's the legacy you want to leave, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your
Yeah.
clients, just in general? What does that legacy look like for you?
Yeah. I want my kids to understand that sacrifice is part of life.
Mm,
I think it's really big. I think it's really deep. I mean, looking around right now at the youth, I've got an 11-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a just a 6-month old. My 11-year-old, like I see the struggles around tenacity
mm,
and structure and like stick to itness, grit that I
mm.
think is completely getting lost nowadays. Like everything is served so quickly, and here I feel like I'm like sound like an old man. I'm just about to turn 40 though, so it's but like that tenacity, that stick to itness is disappearing in a lot of ways. And I heard a story recently of um, youth kids who are who are just like leaving university, getting into their first jobs, are now asking for stay away orders from their HR departments because their boss is telling them to do work, like, hey, you didn't show up on time and you got to do work. And they're like, whoa, I can't, like I'm so fragile that I can't handle that. And I think like that is it. So if I can teach my kids tenacity and like you're never going to get everything given to you on a silver platter, that is of value or of worth, so you got to work at it.
You may be old, you may be old fashioned. I don't know, really.
Maybe.
I think as we age, we start to see the world differently. But I will admit to you and acknowledge what you said. It's a different mindset. I'm older than you. I just turned 50, and I still have that same mindset. And I was not allowed to not have grit, and maybe that was just how I grew. My parents brought me up, but I'm going to speak from experience. I know somebody who has some children who do not possess this. They have this sort of sense of entitlement that everything
Hmm.
should just be given to them. And they were raised that way. So, and from someone who's our age. So I don't know if it's necessarily a generational thing or if it's just the way the parents view the world and whether they have evolved, adapted, and changed, et cetera. There's a lot of other variables that go into parenting. You and I both know that. I have a 19
Hmm.
and a 16-year-old. Anyway, I digress. If you could leave anyone listening to this podcast with one takeaway, one solution that you want all of your speakers to have, what's that solution? What's that takeaway?
Always be learning, always be refining,
Mm,
because I think no talk is ever done the first time. You
mm,
have to think about your speech as a product, because no product is ever done in the first iteration. I was just watching a video on a guy who was building a ultrasonic knife. Believe it or not, like you press a button and it cuts things easier. There's no force. Get that. And people think that like he showed all his iterations. He's got like 50 iterations of a stupid knife. It took him 3 years to build it. And yet we think that one talk, I got a good idea. Hold on. It's 15 minutes before my presentation. Let me just write down all my notes here. I'm going to talk about this. And they think that you think that's a $50,000 talk. Get real.
So, what was the takeaway? You said curious, but then it really sounds like check your ego at the door.
Check your ego at the door. No, keep refining. Always be refining your talk. Like always be refining and looking for that. Treat your speech like a product and keep refining it.
I just submitted last week for my first TEDx here in
Hey,
Charlotte.
congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats.
I guess we
Nice.
find out on Friday. I think I have a few things to say, so I'm interested in kind of hoping that the other parts of the world can hear that.
Yeah.
That's why I do this podcast. Anyhow, Cam, thank you for stepping into the lab today. I appreciate your insights, and it was a good conversation. Thank you for sort of following my rabbit holes of different nuances and cadences. I got to pull myself in. I'm like here, I'm like rub it back in, rub it back in. I used to run this podcast called the Unlearn Everything Show
Oh,
where
cool.
all we did was go down rabbit holes, and it was really fun, but it never really had a purpose, and conversations would go on for like 3 hours. So I was like, I'm spending way too much time on this podcast, and it's not at all doing anything for the ecosystem I'm trying to build. So anyhow, for those of you listening and would like to connect with Cam, what's the website? What's the best way to find you?
The best way to find me. So I actually do a live show at noon Eastern every single day on pretty much every platform except X. I just never really got on that platform. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, go find me live there and then drop a comment in there. Probably the best way to chat with me more, find me. Other than that, LinkedIn's my favorite social network. So if you want to chat with me, find me there. But thefrequentspeaker.com.
What's the podcast you do, or what's the live show you do?
Oh, just like it's just a live show. I just call it speaker support. So if anyone has any sales, marketing, brand questions around their speaking business, I just go and sit there for an hour and chit chat about it. So
that's cool. You get people showing up?
Yeah, I do. I get regulars showing up too. It's super fun.
That's cool. That's cool. Good for you, man. All right. Well, anyway, his information will be in the show notes down below. I'm supposed to point to it, but it's somewhere down there.
Help you out there, bro.
Yeah. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the Brand Laboratory today and sharing your insights. And let's stay connected. I'd like to chat with you about a few things.
100%. Deevo, you have a great day. Everyone, great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon.